Okay, so David, welcome back to Mea Culpa. Thank you for joining us. We got so much to talk about because every day Captain Chaos is at it again. So I want to start with the first question here. Jack Smith, recent filing in the 2020 election case against Trump, has now raised really serious legal stakes for Trump and the Trump campaign. How do you see this case impacting the overall election, if at all, especially with Trump still actively out there campaigning?
Well, Trump is lucky in that there's not going to be a trial in the next few weeks before the election. He, with the help of the conservative Supreme Court justices, managed to push that beyond the election day by claiming he had immunity and other delaying tactics, just kept pushing it down the road. And now what we have, which I assume might be the last big revelation out of this case before the election, this 165-page filing from Jack Smith, the independent counsel, which is basically saying, here's why the case can proceed despite the Supreme Court's, I would say, bogus decision granting Trump immunity for presidential activity. It lists all the things he did to overturn the 2020 election that Smith says has nothing to do with his official duties. He did this as a private citizen, as a candidate, not as a president. And it's more or less the case that Smith would present in court that, if it went to court. And there's still a question whether that's going to happen or not. And particularly a big question, it probably won't happen if Trump wins the election. And it's, devastating. But we know this. We know there's new facts that have come out that add to the devastating impact here. And I have to say, Trump is somewhat lucky in that this is just appearing in news accounts. You have to read this. It's a long document. I don't know how many undecided voters are going to see stories about this or read the thing itself. But when Mike Pence is in trouble on January 6th and Trump is told that there's a threat against Mike Pence and they have to move him out of the Capitol in the middle of this important ceremonial function he has about certifying the election while people are rioting. Trump is watching on TV. Trump says, so what? That's what this guy says, which is why J.D. Vance has the job now, because, Trump didn't give a damn about Mike Pence, who's sticking to the Constitution. And there are a lot of other sort of mini revelations that come out about Trump, acknowledging or being told time and time again that he lost, but still saying you have to fight even if you lose. Well, that's not what you do. You're supposed to concede and help the next guy or gal become president. So it shows him at sort of the height, or I don't know, the bottom of his deceitfulness and his arrogance and his narcissism and not caring about anyone but himself and trying to overthrow the U.S. Constitution. So if anything, it works as a reminder. If people's memories have gotten hazy about what happened, if you sort of are caught up in the nonsense he's spewing about Haitian immigrants and crime, while crime is down in America at this point in time, here's just a powerful reminder. This guy tried to blow up American democracy. You have lawyers, his lawyers, Rudy Giuliani and other lawyers involved here, and they're texting each other, and it reads like they're mob guys. Make sure you delete these texts. Don't tell anything about this. Maybe I'm being paranoid. Ha, ha, ha. They knew they were doing bad shit and possibly illegal stuff, and they were trying to cover their tracks. This is what was happening. It was a mob-like criminal enterprise, which is what the Georgia prosecutor Fani Willis described it. And so again, a lot of Americans seem not to care. They've been hypnotized into the Trump cult and believe he did nothing wrong. And January 6th was just a bunch of tourists who maybe got a little too raucous. But for the rest of the reality-based world, and we saw this, and it links back to what we saw a couple of nights ago at the debate between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. J.D. Vance could not bring himself to say that Trump lost the election, that Biden won. He would say anything about that. He would change the subject. I want to look at the future. And it just shows that he refuses to acknowledge reality because you can't do that in the Trump world and still remain part of it.
Yeah, that's very, very true. There's so much more. First of all, Donald runs everything like a mob boss. It was part of my first book, Disloyal, part of my second book, Revenge. Very soon there's going to be something that I asked you to work on, to speak with Lev Parnas, where Rudy Giuliani understands, for example, Donald's mob-like behavior. There's text messaging and the way that they want to be like J. Edgar Hoover and start, building dossiers on people. Donald Trump ran the White House as if he was a mob boss, plain and simple. But I also want to ask you this, because he did a lot of posting and over the last couple of days. And in one of the posts that he puts up there, he talks about how the documents case, the Mar-a-Lago documents case, also a Jack Smith case, has been dismissed. That's not accurate. You care to expand on that?
Well, it is and it isn't. It's not over. The judge who he appointed, who many legal experts, I sound like Trump now, many people are saying, but most legal
many very smart and qualified, intelligent, quite frankly, people.
Yeah,
they're people, quite frankly.
They come to me and they say, "Sir, there's something wrong with this judge." It's like, no, but a lot of legal experts, people in the middle, people who are not partisans, have said that her decisions, time and time again, decisions that have been reversed by judges above her, including Trump-appointed judges, I believe, shows that she's really not handling the case well, fairly, accurately, and it looks like she's in the tank for Trump. So, she's coming along and kind of has dismissed it on grounds that seem incredibly flimsy, and it's being appealed by Jack Smith. And I think the good bet at the moment is that her ruling is going to be yet again overturned. I mean, it seems to be a pretty simple case. He walked out with documents that you're not allowed to walk out with. He keeps saying that a president has a right to do this. That's a lie. It's disinformation. It's not true. And it's but again, he has succeeded with the help of a judge, a very inexperienced judge that he put in place to delay a reckoning here. And his whole hope is that if he wins the election, he can then order the Justice Department to fire Jack Smith and to get rid of this case and the other case about his 2020 coup. So, both these cases are, I think, pretty strong legally, despite, the Supreme Court throwing a bit of a wrench into the prosecution on the coup case. I think they're both strong cases. And if they continue, if they get past these delays that Trump has orchestrated and he's not in office and can stop them, they spell big trouble for him. All the more reason why he seems very desperate to win this election.
So, which is funny, because one would think that if you're desperate to win the election, you would start to act in a manner which is consistent with, let's just call it, normalcy. Your behavior would be normal. Your actions would be normal. Your posts would be normal. Not Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. He continues to expand upon abnormal, right? I mean, it's
I'm glad you bring this up, Michael, because I've been thinking about, I think about this a lot. I think he could have won the 2020 race if he had been normal and just said, "I'm sorry about what's happening with COVID. I know it's not about me. Meet with families that have lost loved ones. Let's listen to the scientists, and we can have a debate about things and not make it about him and not be sort of, sort of hardcore about it." Not
skin whiny.
If he just acted like a normal, person, and I think, and shown some remorse and some empathy, and some concern for people, rather than like, "Oh, I'm just out there every hour. This is all about me, and this is great, and I'm great." And I think he could have won this election if he came out for 90 minutes when he had the debate with Kamala Harris. If he came out for the 90 minutes and he said, "Kamala, a lot of harsh words so far. I get it. I don't want to do that anymore. You are obviously an intelligent, accomplished woman. I salute you and your career. We have profound differences in what we want to do as president and the future of this country. And but you seem to have a wonderful family. You've worked hard for the public interest.
Right.
And I am just, let's just have a great 2 months here. And I pledge to you, I will just talk about the issues. If he had done that, I think he would win the election. And if I told you, Michael Cohen, if I said for 90 minutes, you have to behave in a way that may not be your natural demeanor, but if you do that, at the end of the 90 minutes, you can become president of the United States. I'm pretty sure you would do that. I'm pretty sure I would do that. I'm pretty sure
hold on a second.
Hey,
David. Sure. But David, remember, all the journalists on especially the far right side, including some that are centrist, when I was testifying for those 25 plus hours at the Manhattan District Attorney trial, the criminal trial. Oh, Cohen's going to be bombastic. He's going to be a shit witness. All you needed to do is when you're sitting on the bench, in the witness stand, all you need to do is to act like a normal human being.
Yes,
act like a witness.
Yeah, and you might recall that after you were up there testifying in public, I sent you a note saying everybody had it wrong, but I kept telling people, other journalists and so on, there's no reason to believe that Michael Cohen won't do the obvious thing as a witness. He's a lawyer, and everyone can make mistakes on the witness stand and get, and stumble and not, but in terms of your approach, I thought that was hysterical. He's going to get up there and be awful and be terrible. And only Donald Trump does that. Most people, if told, follow this course of advice for a limited amount of time, it will help your case. It may keep you out of jail. It may get you elected president. They have the ability to do that. They have the ability to listen to people other than themselves. But Trump cannot do that. I mean, I think in some ways we're fortunate that he can't do that because otherwise I think he could win. I mean, it's hard for, when the mood in the public is so sour and you're part of the in administration, it's hard to win an election. People want to change, and even change from a guy they had before might be enough change for them. But it's only Donald Trump's narcissism, racism, misogyny, bombacity, assholeness,
xenophobia, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism. We just keep asking. I can name a few more too.
I know, and most people can hide that if they have to for a limited period. I mean, look at J.D. Vance the other night. He came across as a basically, okay, regular human being. Now, he lied through his teeth about a lot of things, but if you're just talking about impression, he was kind and courteous, and to Tim Walz, and as Tim Walz was to him, they both were trying to get their favorable, likable ratings up and not go too much on the attack and seem too harsh. And I get that. But he was able to do that. And I've watched hours and hours of J.D. Vance videos when he's talking
Yep.
and he's being mean and cruel, attacking progressives and women and everything. That's the way he talks about people.
Migrants. Yeah.
Yeah, but he was able to get on, be the better J.D. Vance.
100%. I just want to jump in because I have a thought. And the thought is another post that Trump has recently been attacking. He makes the claims that, he has his own bizarro world that he lives in. He claims that he's winning in every single poll. He believes that there's not a single poll that's out there that shows him losing, when in fact, Kamala Harris is currently leading in every major poll that's out there. Maybe not the Newsmax poll, but other than that, she is winning in every poll. You think that these numbers reflect a fundamental shift in voter attitude? Or do you think that we're just seeing some sort of temporary trend? Because there's only about a month left.
Yeah. I mean, temporary trends now start becoming, permanent trends at this stage.
Right.
I not a big fan of obsessing about polls. I mean, I think they're probably more useful for campaigns, but where they should put money and issues, which issues are getting salience and what's working and what's not, where they may have to make adjustments. I mean, all the polls still almost always are within the margin of error here, right? So, yeah, so Kamala Harris may be up 3-4 points, but usually the margin of error is 3-4 points. Now, if you see all the things trending that way, okay, fine. But there's been so much discussion lately about looking at these polls and having to readjust them. If you look at the 2020 numbers or the 2020 numbers, and it could well be that they need to be readjusted in a whole different way. I mean, we've never elected a black woman president of the United States. I think for some people in this country, electing a woman and electing a black person, although we did do that once, is a heavy lift. May not be who they envision as the leader of the country. So I think, anytime there's a first involved in polling, that might be hard to capture. So all I know right now is, imagine if you're a Democrat, how you'd be feeling if Joe Biden was still the nominee. Right. I mean, right. The numbers have turned around a little bit. Kamala Harris has energy, but more importantly, there really seems to be energy at the grassroots level for her and for Democrats. A lot of the Senate numbers are, for not in every race, but in a lot of races are better for the Democrats than one might have expected. The Ruben Gallegos, Carrie Lake race in Arizona doesn't seem to be as close as one might have expected. Ditto for Sherwood Brown and Marino in Ohio. So the Democrats are competitive in a way that I think a lot of people a few months ago felt they weren't. And Trump, as you say, lies about everything. So he lies about these numbers. He denies reality. And I think, I don't know, the thing that I always puzzle over is to what degree his voters, his supporters, the people who come to his rallies dressed up in Trump wear and defacing their cars with, Trump slogans, whether they actually believe him or they actually like the fact that he lies, then he gets away with it. Like, they know he's lying, but he's doing it. It's a way to poke at the media. It's to poke at people who are reality based, at liberals and media and academic people, or whether they actually listen and go, yeah, he's up in all the polls, even though if you look at any news source, it's true. It's clear that he's not. But I still think that whatever the polls show at this stage, no one should base any real actions on them. And if people on both sides just need to work as hard as possible, and we'll see how it ends up. But it's the fact that it's a competitive race with a guy who tried to overthrow the U.S. government, and who hundreds of thousands of people died on his watch, who probably didn't need to because of his poor handling of COVID, shows that no matter what happens on election day, America still has some profound problems.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. But can we just continue with the nonsense that somehow or another Trump creates in his mind? I don't know where this next one came from, but Trump just made a claim that his boyfriend, Kim Jong-un, is trying to kill him. And obviously, look, you know this better than most as the editor-in-chief of Mother Jones. This has been met with tremendous skepticism and ridicule by people like me. So how do you think that statements like this resonate with his base? And how do you think that these sort of bullshit stories can affect the undecided voters?
Yeah, I think that statement seemed to show an issue about cognitive ability, because I think he was trying to say that Iran wanted to kill him, not Kim Jong-un. But nevertheless, he's making as many mistakes as Joe Biden ever made that got people all worked up. when he's speaking, and sometimes he doesn't know exactly where he is, and he says the wrong name of the town,
The
and
wrong name of the person,
wrong name
right?
of the
Remember
person.
Ronnie Johnson instead of
Yeah,
Ronnie
and
Jackson,
he's an
Allenville instead of Allentown.
he's an older guy who doesn't exercise and has a bad diet. I don't expect him to be a mental whiz at this point, and God knows what it will be like 4 years down the road. But when he says this stuff, and it's pointed out by the media, people on social media, and so on, I mean, I think his supporters, are kind of wed to him, as people say, as you would in a cult. The question is, and it's a very small slice of the public, people who are, undecided, and what he does and how that may impact them. It was a very, very, very small focus group, but there was one or two on the night of the vice presidential debate.
Yep.
And when J.D. Vance said that, he wouldn't say that Biden had won the 2020 election, that turned a lot of these undecided voters that they were talking to in these focus groups against him. I tend to think that for undecided voters, and they were basically forced to watch, right? A lot of undecided voters are less engaged and they're not watching these debates, but I think they're getting impressions. And so if you just see or hear Trump going on with his litany of hate and boasting, and I'm the best president ever, and I want to, it just reminds people of the chaos and of his acerbic personality and basic indecency. And so I think that in some ways, I would speculate, has the most impact on people who have yet to make up their mind, that they just look at this guy and they go, I just don't want more of that. And the fact that he lies all the time about everything almost might be secondary, because that's baked into the cake. People know that, and some still vote for him, and some have already processed that into their decision.
Yeah, I mean it's totally a freaking joke. I mean, look, I just want to continue with it, right? So
Yeah.
during the recent vice presidential debate, while this shit was going on, Trump is posting about Pete Rose. I mean, seemingly distracting the viewers from the political discourse that is supposed to help him, right? I mean, he chose Shady Vance, right? So don't you want the people to get to know him? No, that's not what Trump wants. You take the spotlight away from him. He's got to come out and do something stupid. So now he's posting about Pete Rose. I mean, do you see? I mean, it's obviously, I believe it's a deliberate tactic, right, to divert attention from J.D. Vance and onto himself. But I wanted to get your take on it, because it's so absurd.
Having focused on the debate while it was happening, and literally not being able to keep up with the dozens of tweets a day from him, posts, I had not caught that one. That is just completely ridiculous. And, it could be one of two things, or both. It could be that, like, he just didn't care that his running mate was having the most important night of his life during the debate, and just wasn't even paying attention, and thus thought he could just tweet the way he usually tweets. Or it could be that he was watching the debate and maybe even upset that he wasn't attacking Walz or Harris even more than he was. I mean, he was working very hard and coming across as somewhat quasi-likable, and maybe that ticked off Trump. So he just said, screw it. I'm just going to, turn the channel, watch ESPN, and tweet about Pete Rose. But in any event, and this comes, I know, as no surprise to you or to our audience out there, it shows a fundamental disrespect for his partner in this endeavor, and also just for the whole entire democratic process. You want people, if you care about our civil society, in civics, you want people watching these things. You want to encourage people to watch the debate and make up your mind, and everybody should be as informed as they can be. And yet, none of that. This being important for J.D. Vance, this being important for the body politic, none of that registers with him because, of course, as a malignant narcissist, nothing exists outside his own realm of existence.
I mean, it's crazy because of the 4 individuals, Kamala Harris, Tim Walz, Trump, and Shady Vance, Tim Walz has the highest favorability of all 4.
Yeah.
And the lowest, shockingly enough, is J.D. Vance. The lowest. So here, he's coming out in order to show the world that he's not the asshole everybody thinks that he is, or that we know that he is. And he's trying to be calm, collect, respectful. I thought that it was actually a very good interaction with J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. I really believe that they shook hands afterwards. They went over, they shook the moderators. So I need to tell you all about Tommy John. When you wear Tommy John, you're just much more comfortable, so you can do everything better. I mean, it's time to up your game with Tommy John underwear. Tommy John stylish underwear, they have dozens of comfort innovations. So for example, they have supportive contour pouch. They're breathable, they're lightweight, and they have moisture-wicking fabric with 4 times the stretch of competing brands. Look, we all know that it's hot outside. It's hot everywhere. For God's sakes, Arizona, more than 100 days of more than 100 degrees temperature. And you definitely don't want chafing going on. And you don't want your guys sticking to your thighs. I mean, there are just a few of my favorite things about Tommy John. I love it, and I know that you will too. With over 20 million pairs sold and thousands of 5-star reviews, guys everywhere, like this guy right here, we love our Tommy Johns. So here's the thing. I've been trying different brands of underwear and trunks for years now, and none of them are even in the same universe as my Tommy Johns. Tommy John fabrics, they keep you 2 to 3 times cooler. That's no joke. 2 to 3 times cooler. And they dry 4 to 5 times faster than regular cotton. So it makes them perfect for travel. So here's what. I want you to shop Tommy John right now for huge savings and listen to this, get 25% off your first order at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. Save 25% at TommyJohn.com/Cohen. See the site for details. You didn't see that happen with Trump, that's certainly for sure. And that bothered Trump. He wanted him to come out and to be disrespectful, chaotic. He wanted him to throw all sorts of bombastic shit at, Tim Walz about Kamala Harris and him attacking them on the whole issues of migrants and go much harder. I think you nailed it. Right on the head. But since we're going to stay on topic for more Trump stupidity and nonsense, Trump, who, as we all know, repeatedly makes these odd statements, and he always invokes individuals, figures like Hannibal Lecter, right? You got the sharks, the electrocution, you got all this crazy shit. But he has now introduced yet another character into his repertoire of insanity. I don't know if you heard this. He introduced Rambo, John Rambo. Yep, in one of his speeches. The question I really want to ask you, Dave.
I missed that one. I mean, I do recall there have been his crazy cult followers have produced memes in which they take Trump's face and head and put it on the body of John Rambo, who was played by Sylvester Stallone decades ago. But I missed this particular reference. But it's also interesting because it's very 80s-ish, right? I mean, Trump seems to be always stuck
into the past
in the 80s. Not even the 90s. And what I noticed was when he was, as he's been attacking migrants and immigrants from the in the last couple of days. He keeps saying they're coming from the Congo, which to me means like deep, dark Africa, what we used to, be conveyed in very racist terminology. And there is no such thing as the Congo. There are two countries. There's the Democratic Republic of Congo and there's the Republic of Congo. But the Congo is how, people in TV shows and movies used to refer to Africa a couple of decades ago. So yes, this guy is truly rooted back then, but I missed the Rambo reference. Maybe he can move on to the A team and bring Mr. T into this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh boy. I mean, it's again, it's beyond. But he brings in these fictional characters, and I don't understand the reason why. That he thinks that there's a benefit to align himself with. Look, John Rambo, for whatever he was, principled, veteran. I mean, pro-America. He's also a pretty violent fictional character, right? I mean, let's be real. I mean, the guy shoots up an entire town. He's shooting bows and arrows. He's going off, running off in order to save the colonel. I mean, he's a pretty violent character. He's a likable character. He's certainly like Captain America, but not a Marvel comic character.
Listen,
he's a fictional character.
You know this better than most. Trump has this idea of hyper-masculinity in which he is the epitome of masculinity. I mean, he talks about his body. His body looks better than Joe Biden or anybody else. I mean, there was a picture the other day, I don't want to shame anyone because of their physique, but, he brings this up. And there was a picture of him the other day from the back, and you see these shoulder pads that in his suit jacket, that about 5 times the size of normal shoulder pads. And it's obviously there because he has this pear-shaped body and he's trying to broaden his shoulders. And this is a guy who I've never seen walk a golf course. Maybe once decades ago he did so. And I was a big fan when Biden was in the race. I thought that Biden should challenge him to a bicycle ride, not a bicycle race, just a bicycle ride. Let's just see you get on a bike and ride. I mean, we were talking about how he often, boasted of his sexual prowess as overcompensation. The way he lies about his body and how he's a great athlete because he can hit a golf ball, the way he lies about winning championships, the way he cheats at golf and makes phony plaques about his victories. I mean, there is something completely wrong psychologically.
Well, do you know that, by the way, he always was angry that he's not in the Guinness Book of World's Record for the most number of hole-in-ones in history. That's
just crazy. There's no way he has the most number of holes in one in history. The way he used to, make a fake Time Man of the Year cover and put himself in it when he wasn't the Man of the Year. So, I mean, this is kind of what I don't get in certain ways. Why people, he's such a phony in this regard. In multiple ways, all the times, and why that doesn't put people off. I mean, his supporters, obviously like it. I mean, when he says, I have a beautiful physique, and you just look at him, do they just like the fact that he's lying openly about this stuff and can get away with it? And they wish they could too. I think that's maybe part of it. But these are all just so obvious, self-aggrandizing lies and prevarications. It's almost like entertaining. It'd be like if, Woody Allen came out and said, I'm the best weightlifter in the world. I mean, there's sort of, this, I keep going back to, he keeps reminding me, and I had this thought a couple months ago, of Andrew Dice Clay. Remember Andrew Dice Clay, the comic?
One of my favorite comics.
Right. And he would say he'd be a misogynist and a racist and make all these off-color jokes. And then he would just say, it's an act. I'm just pretending to be this sort of guy.
Okay. Wait. By the way, he stole that shtick.
but no one ever really knew what to make of him, and all these essays written about him. He actually turned out to be a great actor. He's been in some movies in the
Uh-huh.
last few years, and he's really
Yep.
quite good at it. But it was like people didn't know how to respond. They're like, is this guy for real or not? Is he getting away with this? I want to be able to get away with shit like this. And Trump kind of fills that role for some people.
Yeah. By the way, Dice actually, because that was the name of, there was a show on television called Dice, which was just hysterical, where he plays himself, in Vegas, and he's like a washed up, old comic who had his day. He makes fun of himself. He's very self-deprecating, but he's hysterical. He stole that shtick, by the way, from Don Rickles, who was appeared to come out and to be one of the most racist and misogynistic guys that was out there. But it was, as he would say, no, I'm just teasing. It's an act. I love you. Right? He didn't have a racist bone, in his body. And the same with Andrew Dice Clay, who I believe is really Andrew Silverstein, or something like that. Right? I mean,
but anyway, that's because Trump obviously, and you've talked about this, people have talked about it. It's not an original thought. Is more of an entertainer than a politician, and there's a reason that he resonates with millions of people. Now, a bunch of people vote for him just because he's a Republican, and they're Republicans, and they want lower taxes or whatever, and they don't believe in climate change, and they just vote for Republicans because that's their tribe. But there are millions of people who get off on this act, right? And there's a reason for that, because things don't happen for no reason. And it's, I think somewhat disturbing that, it's one thing to watch Andrew Dice Clay at Madison Square Garden, and then, you go home and it's over and done with. But another thing to say, this guy is so entertaining and fun, and I like him, and even if he's a narcissist and lies, and I think we should give him control of the nuclear arsenal. It's like, right. And that's, and that's an issue that's going to stay with us no matter what happens on Election Day. And we'll see if Trump loses, what the Trump wannabes are going to do to try to gain some of this.
They're not going to do shit. They can keep blabbering all that they want. Let me tell you something. Trump loses, it's going to be there's going to be a peaceful transfer of power from Joe Biden to Kamala Harris. Trump, who has nothing to do with government at all, will not be able to do what he did last time, which is to hold back the or police officers or the National Guard from stopping any bullshit that may end up, happen. Oath keepers are already in prison. The 1%ers are gone. The Proud Boys are also, the guy's doing 18 years for the insurrection that Trump calls warriors. But I want to just touch on one more fucking wackadoodle thing that Donald Trump claimed at his last rally. And he started going off on, get a load, ready for this one? Water-free bathrooms.
Oh, yeah.
Water-free bathrooms.
Oh, yeah,
and he makes these crazy, crazy comments about regulations and efficiency standards, which, to me, really comes across as out of touch. Who has not used a urinal that is water-free? They use some sort of vegetable oil or something like that. It's supposed to be good for the environment. Not only do I not know
if you live
what they're talking about, but it makes no sense. Let me just ask you this one question. Do you think that his fixation on these topics is a reflection of his complete and total detachment from serious policy issues? Or do you think that it's a deliberate appeal to his niche audience?
Well, I think it's both. I think, if you live in Nevada or Arizona, places where we have tremendous water issues, and they're going to only get worse, probably worse with climate change, which he denies is happening, calls it a hoax. And the other night, Vance couldn't even bring himself to challenge that either. Then you want water-free bathrooms as much as you can, water-free urinals. You don't want to use that water to flush, urine away. And so, we're all going to, a lot of parts of the country are going to have to move in that direction. It's a policy matter. It's smart. But he goes on about, washing machines and toilets and air conditioning units and light bulbs. And, without realizing that, some of these things might be up for discussion. But a lot of this stuff is as we grow in population, as the world grows in population, and we use up more resources, we're going to have to find ways to not do things. But I also think it's kind of like, to me, Archie Bunker-ish. Like Archie Bunker could never get with anything that was change, right? He had the same chair. He wanted to listen to the same music. It was always anything new was kind of alien to him, and he was living at a time where there was a lot of cultural unrest and a lot of new things happening. And it seems to me that Trump kind of acts like an old get off my lawn type of guy, that he doesn't understand that things have to change for us even to, maintain the great lifestyles we have. And, he doesn't want to acknowledge global warming. He goes on about windmills and electric boats, which, not a problem for the people selling electric boats. There are whole businesses out there. He goes on about electric cars, not a problem for Elon Musk and electric cars. And he just never talks about innovation and anything new. It's like all this, highfalutin new gadgetry, and I think it goes to this core issue that America has changed too much for people, often meaning too many people of color in the world, changing demographics. And, we just want to go back to the way things were when we used to just throw out our bottles and not recycle. No one had to press 1 for English and 2 for Spanish. And, and he's playing to that sort of cultural, and maybe we can call it a chronological nativism. Life doesn't change. I want to go back then. And when no one told me I had to, separate my garbage between what, compost and what needs to be recycled, and so that's kind of what it is. I mean, it speaks to, I think, a profound ignorance, a profound resistance to change. And, I think, again, going back to the whole entertaining type of thing, when he talks that way, he talks about it in the way a stand-up comic would. Think about Jerry Seinfeld talking about airplane meals or something, right? He just, can you believe this? Can you believe they're doing this now? And what's going to happen if I'm sinking and there's a shark? It's kind of idiotic, but to some people, it may come across as funny, which I don't think is a good way of picking a president.
No, but what's not funny, to be honest with you, what's not funny is, as part of that rhetoric, they're also talking about returning, and this is MAGA Mike Johnson's words, not Michael Cohen's, Mike Johnson. They want to see America return to a white Christian nationalist country. Okay, that's not funny.
No.
It's not funny to those of us who are Jewish. It's not funny to those who are Muslim, who are Hindu, who are atheist. It's not funny. First and foremost, America was never a white Christian nationalist country. And so this ongoing sort of stupidity by Trump and acolytes, there is no beginning and there is no end.
Well, you're right. And it's also, I think, insulting to a majority of Christians who are not white Christian nationalists. A lot of Christians, of course, are people of color. And a lot of them are just not Christian nationalists. And a piece that I wrote a couple of days ago for my Our-Land newsletter, people can find it at davidcorn.com, was all about how J.D. Vance went to this event last weekend that was run by perhaps the most prominent white Christian nationalist in the nation, a guy named Lance Wallnau, who's been out there saying Christians have to control the media, Hollywood, industry, academia, and the government in order to bring the kingdom of Christ to the land. And he calls himself a Christian nationalist. And here is J.D. Vance appearing at one of his events, which is designed to get evangelical voters in swing counties to vote for Donald Trump. This is a guy who said that Donald Trump was, has been anointed by God to lead the United States to a land of Christian nationalism. And here's J.D. Vance giving his approval and thumbs up to all this. And the guy, and we've talked about Project 2025, Russ Vought, who is one of the leading proprietors of Project 2025, is an avowed Christian nationalist. So right. They are completely interlaced and interwoven into the Trump campaign, into J.D. Vance's world, and it just doesn't get enough attention in the media. And unfortunately, it was one of the many things regarding J.D. Vance's extreme views that was not talked about at the debate, either by the moderator or by Tim Walz, who was trying to be more of a good guy than an attack dog.
Yeah, I totally agree. So look, let me ask you this then, because Donald Trump sees himself as this powerful, this wickedly intelligent guy, and somewhere along the line, whether it's he or his campaign, which of course, if he likes the idea, he assumes that it is his idea anyway, he's now targeting Kamala with all of these accusations that she's, one, incompetent, two, that she was successful in getting to where she's at by providing sexual favors in order to rise up the ranks, and that she and her campaign are using AI, artificial intelligence manipulation, in their ads. So my question to you, David, is what do you make of these attacks by Trump? And do you think that they help his chances? Do you think that they're influencing any voter perception? Let's just go on the presumption for a second before you answer that Trump's 35%, let's say that's his MAGA base, 35%, that's his. Even if he beat up Melania on Fifth Avenue, if he chopped her hands off, if he went ahead and he killed somebody, me, on Fifth Avenue, that would not change one single vote of his MAGA supporters. And I use me and obviously his wife, right, as comparison in terms of somebody who he loves, allegedly, and somebody who he hates, meaning me. So not one of those people are going to change their mind. But you have these accusations, not just is it against a woman, but a black woman who is beating your ass in the polls. What's your thoughts on that?
It goes back to what we said earlier. If he could just have come out and acted, with some grace and respect towards Kamala Harris, maybe towards Joe Biden, he'd be way up now and possibly in a much better position to win. I just don't think he can look at a black woman, maybe even a black person, without thinking negatively about that person, unless that person has praised him.
Right.
I mean, the language and the rhetoric that he uses again and again and again when he's talking about a black person who's a foe to him, as opposed to just anybody else, is harsher and is usually kind of has racist intonations, if not outright racist. Letitia James and Fonnie Willis, the prosecutor in your case, he calls them animals.
Alvin Bragg. Don't forget Alvin Bragg.
Rather than you saying these guys are political hacks out to get me, which would be the normal way a politician or a person would talk about it, he goes down and calls them animals and beasts, and they're idiots, they're dumb, they're basically not human. And so he does this. He obviously can't help himself. And at this stage of the game, it's not. There's a great line that someone had, years ago. Not everyone who votes for Trump is a racist, but every racist votes for Trump.
Voter. Yep,
is a Trump voter, right? And so he already has the racists. He already has, with his hypermasculinity and his misogyny, the misogynists. He already has them. They're not going to, leave him if he doesn't attack Kamala Harris as being mentally deficient and insane. That only can piss off people, can piss off women, can piss off black people, and piss off white guys like me who care about how you treat people in public. So why does he do this? It just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I don't think he can help himself. I don't think he can stop it. And it's just not going to, at this point, it's not going to bring him any vote that he doesn't already have.
Right.
And while there are very few undecideds, this could be the type of thing that if an undecided voter hears it and is paying attention at that moment in time, might just say, this guy is a schmuck, and I won't vote for him. And they may not vote for Kamala Harris, but if someone who might have been leaning towards Trump decides not to vote for him, that's a loss for him.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because like you, I'm not a big fan of polls. You know that. But what I will say is the ones that interest me the most are the ones in the swing states. And I was just looking at one the other day where Kamala is now leading in states, believe it or not, like Florida and Ohio, right? I couldn't, that her popularity is growing, all right? And Trump's is shrinking. And it appears that, at least to me, that the basis for Trump's softening amongst the key demographics in states like Florida and Ohio. And I want to change that, right? I didn't mean that she's leading. She's leading in momentum, not in the poll numbers, but certainly in momentum. And the reason for the softening, the way I see it, is because the key demographics in those states are Gen Z and suburban women. And I think Gen Z is sick and tired of trying to understand, sane wash, whitewash the stupidity coming out of the Trump campaign and mostly Trump's mouth. But how do you assess key factors that are driving this shift, that's driving the Kamala Harris-Tim Walz momentum and showing the softening of the Trump Shady Vance campaign ticket?
Well, we know even before the switch to Kamala Harris, we know that a majority of voters on all sides were not happy with the choice of Biden versus Trump, right? People would still decide between the two of them, but they were not happy with this choice, which means that they were not happy with Biden and that they were not happy with Trump. Trump is just bringing a stale, old routine back in. It's like a summer rerun, and now we're out of summer, and he's not doing anything differently. I'm just amazed that he has no ability to even attempt to persuade people who aren't already with him, right? He just feeds the base over and over, and as we get close to the election, the rhetoric, which wins the base over but alienates people who are not with him.
So what is Lumen? Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or you're burning carbs. And it gives you a tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, your workouts, your sleep, something I need badly, and even stress management. So let me tell you how Lumen works. All you have to do is you breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fat or carbs. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on the measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after your workouts and your meals so that you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. So here's what Lumen does. Lumen provides crucial insights and helpful guidance for your lifestyle. It requires effort, though, and it also requires a lifestyle change to achieve results. Let me be clear. Lumen is not just a weight loss tool. It's about understanding and improving your metabolic health. So let me also tell you why metabolic health matters. It matters because your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food that you eat into fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimum metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and better sleep. Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. It can also track your cycle, as well as the onset of menopause, and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through hormonal shifts so that you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. So if you want to take the next step to improving your health, go right now to lumen.me/Cohen to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/Cohen for 15% off your purchase. And thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
Gets harsher and harsher. So the stuff about the Haitian migrants, and now they're taking, he's saying shit like they're taking over all of Colorado. You can't leave your home to buy bread. You will be raped and murdered. And Kamala Harris has an app that is bringing these people in for the cartels. I mean, the crazy and the harshness, the extremism keeps getting amped up. We're way past 11 on the Spinal Tap scale, and I don't know, up towards towards 20, and that is kind of like running faster in place, right? Like think of a cartoon, and it's not bringing anybody in. So the people who are, who didn't like him before have no reason to kind of rethink him. They're not seeing anything new. They're just seeing the old stuff at a more intense level. And you have Kamala Harris, who has the advantage of not having been on the stage for so long as the number one person on the ticket. And people have a general, as you noted in those polls, a more positive impression of her. She is reinforcing that as she comes out with some policy ideas about housing and economy and fighting hard on reproductive rights. And as she does more interviews and her debate performance, so people who are not sure about her, don't know that much about her, are giving, and she is trying to win people over. She's trying to come across as a person leading a centrist coalition. She's campaigning, I believe, today as we talk, maybe later, with Lynn Cheney, a Republican, in Wisconsin. And so she is trying to win people over who don't know enough about her, who might not even agree with some of her policy ideas, but because she favors democracy and wants to keep Trump out of office and wants to have a civil political discourse. So she's doing what a politician normally does. In politics, the cliche is politics is not about, excuse me, I'll rephrase that. Politics is about addition, not subtraction. You have your supporters who are with you, and you add to that group to get over 50%. Right. And Trump is not running that campaign. He's just throwing out red meat. And as he gets closer to the election, as the polls, look maybe worse for him, although again, I'm not, I don't want to put too much into the polls. He seems to be saying, I need redder and redder and redder meat to toss to people. And so I think that explains why her favorable numbers are going up, while his, which are pretty low, are basically stuck where they are. He's doing nothing to change anything.
Or going down. So look, the hour goes by real fast here on Mea Culpa. I really have just one last question for you, Dave. And this is one that I just experienced. I just returned. I was in Rome. I was on a television program. Well, I was flown out there by RAI, RAI Television, and I was appeared before a live audience with this very famous Italian television host, Massimo Giletti, and it was fantastic. But when I was on the flight heading to Rome, there were two couples in front of me, and both of the men, elder gentlemen, were wearing United States Vietnam veteran hats. Those hats that say Vietnam veteran. And one gentleman approached me while it was in flight, and asked me if I was Michael Cohen, and I said, I am. And he said, I want to thank you. I said, you're thanking me? I said, let me thank you. Because the only reason I can do what I do and say what I say is because of people like you who fought for my rights. And he was so touched. We both actually had like tears in our eyes. I bring this up because then he introduced me to the other gentleman that they were traveling with, who is also a Vietnam veteran, wearing the identical hat. They were taking their wives to Rome, which was really beautiful. And the reason I bring that up as a story is because I'm watching as Trump's approval ratings amongst veterans, which was once a solid voting bloc for him. I know that because of, when I was involved with Trump, that was once a solid voting bloc for the guy. It's slipping and slipping a lot. When both of these two veterans come to me and say, I fucking hate the guy, and with like real animus, I ask them, why is it that you have changed your position? And their comment to me, the level of disrespect that he shows veterans on a daily basis, from Normandy to the losers and suckers, he goes, we're not losers and suckers. And I said, no, you're not. But this erratic behavior by Trump and his comments has given Kamala Harris a much more measured approach in how to take over this solid voting bloc away from Trump and to herself. Are you seeing the same thing? And how do you assess that?
He's given her so much running room with veterans, with union workers, of course, with women, and
Blacks,
a lot of
Haitians, Mexicans, Jews,
young people. I mean, it just goes. I just keep repeating myself. He is doing nothing to bring people in, or even to reinforce people who are on the margins. Like these veterans might have supported him once upon a time, and there are a lot of people who voted for him once or twice in the past who are not going to be doing so now. And I think a lot of them are dying. Well, that may be an exaggeration here, but would be very receptive to an overture from him. Just act better, say something different. His values that he presents, which in 2016, were novel. I'm a business guy. I'm kind of have sharp elbows. I'll get things done. I'm brusque. Yeah, crude, rude. Okay, I can see people kind of, some people saying maybe it's time to have someone like that, even if that's not the kind of person I'd want to raise my children to be. But now, 9 years down the road, and he's just cruder and ruder and more abrasive, and has demonstrated time and time again he doesn't care about veterans or anybody else other than himself. I mean, the values that he embodies and that he conveys are basically not American values of decency and commonality, looking for common ground, having good conversations with neighbors who you disagree with. I mean, things that Tim Walz has been very good in talking about from the heartland. But those are not just heartland values. If you live in a big city, you live in an apartment building, you're right on top of other people. You have to get along. You have to get, you have co-op meetings, or you have community meetings, you have church meetings, and you often disagree about all sorts of stuff. But you're in the same neighborhood and you try to find your way together. And Trump is just all about tribalism. Everybody outside my tribe is an enemy, is a foe, and they must be destroyed. We don't talk to them. And you see this reflected in Congress, where now it's a sin for Republicans, MAGA, with the MAGA movement, to come up with bipartisan bills with Democrats. Of course, that happened with the border bill, but it happens all the time now. And so, he represents a certain set of divisive, tribalistic values that are fueled more by hate than by looking for what we have in common. And I don't think it wears well, Michael. It may have worked once upon a time, and it still works, obviously, for tens of millions of people, and he still might get elected. But it's not like people are seeing that and who weren't with him before and saying, no, I want that now.
Right.
And that's, I think, explains the basic dynamics of the race. And, he's stuck with his base, and you can call them the automatic Republicans.
Yep.
And that gets
and that's all he's got.
And that gets him up into the mid 40s, maybe the high 40s. And if he can, again, like 2016, when you were there, if he can sort of thread the needle in 3, 4, 5 swing states, he's going to lose the popular vote by 10 million. I mean, I don't make political predictions, but that seems obvious that he will lose the popular vote.
By a big number, too.
By big numbers, as he did, every time he's run for president. The question is whether, he can just, thread that needle in those few states. And, he certainly is not running the type of campaign that would make that more possible than it is now. Well,
David, thank you so much for joining me again on Mea Culpa. You make us smarter. Appreciate you. And I definitely going to have to get you back post the election so that we can check out our predictions. How about that?
Great. Anytime you want.
Thank you, David.